Okay. Good morning. So we are on 68A, Samech Tes, Amud Aleph. At the Mishnah. We're officially on schedule with Daf Yomi, which is good. So it says let's wait for Steve for a minute. Okay, so the Mishnah says, continuing the many Mishnayos in the chapter that we're talking about, when you sell things without specifying what you're selling, what is included in those things. So on Shabbos, we saw when you sell olive press, when you sell a bathhouse, before that we had when you sell a courtyard, and of course had when you sell a house. That was the first one. So now you're selling a city. Now, I don't know if it means necessarily like large area like we have nowadays. You're selling Portland, or you're selling, a large area of land. Maybe basically whatever the name of that area is, that would seem to be included in the city. So even a neighborhood, let's say nowadays, a Hillsdale neighborhood or something like that, that could also, so any area which, has its own name. So you're selling that, which is a lot of land and a lot of other things that come with it. So what's included? Hamocher Seir, you come in to sell a city. Macher, Batim, you're selling houses, Boru, Shichem, Aros, different kinds of things you've dug up that hold water, pits and cisterns, reservoirs, Merchatzaos, bat houses, Shovachos, different bird houses, Beis Habadim, you're selling your olive presses, Beis Hashlachim, we'll see what that means, different kinds of fields, we'll say for now, fields that need irrigation. However, right, this continues the theme that things that are stationary come and that are needed come with the sale. Things that are movable do not come with the sale. But if you mention this phrase, you're selling your city and everything that's included in it, even the movable items are also sold. Obviously, as long as they are a necessity for the city. And so now, afilu haya ba behema v'avadim harei kulan mechulin is an added chiddush, an added novelty. Even an animal or servants, those are also things that when you sell a city, they come along with it. Says Rosh Gamliel, a cryptic statement, Hamocher es ha'ir, Macher es ha-center. You sell the city, you also sell the center. There's going to be two opinions in the Gemara what that means, so we'll wait to see till the end. So now, Amar le Rav Acha, Braid Rav Aviyah le Rav Ashi. Rav Acha, the son of Rav Aviyah, said to Rav Ashi, so I learned from this Mishnah, Shma Mina, that Avada Kimitatul Adami. So now, there's going to be a debate. Does a servant have the same status of land for one second. Right. Way later in the Masechta. So we're gonna wonder, is a servant like land, or is he like movable objects? Now in Kiddushin, so the Gemara there says when it comes to acquiring a servant, he's acquired in the same ways that land is acquired, and it learns it out of a pasuk. However, is he included in when you're selling land? Does the servant come with that land? I guess he's so important to it. It's like because he's working for it, he's so part of that land. Maybe he comes to the land. But at the end of the day, he's also movable. He's not attached to the ground. So maybe he's not included. So that's a question in 100 daf from now. So says the Gemara, why don't we learn from our Mishnah, Avda Kimitatla Dami? How do I know that? How do we conclude from our Mishnah that an Eved is like a movable object? The E Kimikarka Dami, because if he was like the land, he should be sold. There's Davin Agav Masa. He should be sold with the land. And yet our Mishnah says, right? Our Mishnah says that behemoths and avadim, animals and avadim, are not included. So if he was part of the land, he should be sold with the land. So you can conclude from here that really an Eved is like a movable object. So says the Gemara, the Elamah, you want to say, Avda Kimatatla Dami, really? It's so simple, it's so clear to you that an Eved is really considered like a movable object and therefore will not be included in the sale. So, Mai Afilu. What's the Afilu? Even in Eved and the Behema. Meaning, if you look at the Mishnah, it says, right, movables are not sold, but if you write, you're selling the city and everything which is included in the city, so it sounds like not even movables, even a behema and avadim. So if an eved's just like a regular movable object, so what's the even? Even an eved. So says the Gemara, Elamaischalameimar. So what do you have to say? That even within movable objects, there's a difference. Shiny bein metatla denayid, mi metatla delo nayid. There's a difference between movable objects that are stationary and movable objects that are movable. So the Mishnah, when it said that when you write down whatever's included in my city, I will sell. So it's going to include stationary, movable objects which are stationary. Then the Mishnah said, Afilu, a behema and an eved. A behema and an eved are movable. They can always just leave the city, right? But other movable objects that you use for your city, they can't just get up and move. So even things that can get up and leave the city, so even those things are sold. So that's how you have.
Haven't we learned that an eved is karka?
Oh, so that's what the Rashbam says, that when it comes to Kiddushin, and you want to know how to acquire an Eved, the Gemara makes a drasha that compares an Eved to Karka. So in terms of acquisition, an Eved is like Karka. Yeah, maybe for other halachas also. In terms of when you phrase things, what we call Lashon B'nei Adam, the way people talk. Because when you're talking about a document, you're trying to get into the understanding of what a person means when he writes that Hamocher Esa'ir. He's selling the city, or he's selling a house, or a bathhouse. When people, it's like in Nidarim. In Nidarim, that's the rule. When you make a neder, you always avow, you always go after what's Lashon B'nei Adam. What do people really mean with those words? So that's a question later on. When people write down karka, people write down metaltal and removable objects, do they include avadim in that or not? Maybe an eved is so linked to land that, of course, when I'm selling my land, I'm also going to sell the person that's going to be cultivating and working the land, or because without him, it's not going to go. Or no, when I sell the land, I sell strictly just the land, right? It's like we had yesterday, right? When you sell, Rabbi Dovid Gleizer kept saying, when you sell a courtyard or an olive press, he took the words literally. You're only selling the courtyard, or you're only selling the beam, the main beam of your olive press. That you don't mean anything more than that. So yeah, so too over here. So says the Gemara, even if you understand that an eved is a movable object, that when a person writes down he's selling land, it does not include a servant, an eved, in that statement. But even if it's a movable object, you still have to differentiate between objects that are movable and objects that are stationary. That's what you see from our Mishnah. Not only are movables included, even avadim. What's even avadim? Even movables, right? Even metaltalin movables, but that are not stationary, are still included in that. So once you have to say that, so then afilu tema avda kimakarka dami, just say then an eved could also be like land, but there's a difference. Shiny bein makarka denied, the makarka delo nayid. Once you anyways have to differentiate, so right? There's two schools. There's a school of thought that a servant and eved is like metaltalin, it's like movable objects, and there's another school of thought that it's like karka, it's like land. And the Gemara wants to conclude one way from our Mishnah. It says the Gemara, our Mishnah is inconclusive because what you're forced to do from our Mishnah is differentiate within different kinds of movable objects. So you're putting an eved in its own category. He's not like a regular movable object. says the Gemara, once you're doing that, so you just make the same differentiation by land. There's land that's stationary, and there's even land. It sounds funny. There's even land that's movable. Obviously, usually land is not movable, but an Eved might be considered like land. However, he is movable. So therefore, from our Mishnah, there is no conclusion to that question later on Daf Kuf Nun, if an Eved is like land, or if an Eved is like movables, and therefore, all we have is what the Mishnah told us, that if you were to write, you're selling your city and everything which is within your city, then an Eved is going to be included. But if you just write down, I'm selling you land, so then you don't know if an Eved is included in that or not. Okay.
So then why did the Mishnah put that afilu?
What's that, filu?
Yeah, I mean, why did they say even that? What was this?
Afilu behema va'avadim.
Yeah, I mean, why would they add that in there if it's inclusive?
Oh, so the afilu is that when you write down, I'm selling my city.
That's just, you have to specify that.
And then you write down v'kol masha b'socha, and everything included in my city.
Yeah.
Which means even all the movable objects, all your field tools and all your gardening tools and all those things. Even an Eved is included in that. Why?
Got you, because he's moving property.
Because he is movable, right. Right. But the afilu, it sounds like he's not included in regular movables. It's his own special category. He's a movable object.
Gotcha, because he could move on his own accord.
Exactly, he can move on his own accord. Exactly. What is that?
Mobile movable.
A mobile movable object. Correct. I think Steve's starting a business. Mobile movable objects. Back to the South Africa days. Yeah. Okay.
They tried that.
They tried that a little while ago. I'm glad it's not recorded. I know it is. Okay. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel Omer. Hamocher es ha'ir, macher es ha'center. Okay. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel said, no, when you sell a city, you sell the center. What is a center? My center. What center mean? Two definitions. Hacha targimu bar mechavenisa, and Shimon ben Avtolmus Omer Bagi. So either you are a bar mechavenisa, so the Rashbam explains that you're a servant that's job is to really specify whose land belongs to who, so then we can charge them property tax. So you're an Eved that works for the government, for the king, whatever it is, and your job is to mark up exactly who owns which part of land and where the borders are. So either when you sell the city, you sell the center, meaning you sell the person that is so vital to the city, because you have to know, where the land is. Alternatively, what it means bagi. Bagi are just fields that surround the city. So you have two very different definitions of this one word.
You have the town bureaucrat, or you have the
the town bureaucrat.
You've got the town bureaucrat, you've got the
Yeah, exactly. So now basically we're going to go through all these different proofs back and forth. Does the word center, does it really mean the town bureaucrat, or does it mean it's the fields that are around the town? Okay. So now, man da Omar bar mechavenisa. So if you understand that a center means the town bureaucrat, so kol shekain bagi. So when you sell a city, if you're going to sell even the bureaucrat, for sure you're going to sell the fields that are right next to the city. The fields that surround the city. I guess those are necessary for the city. Then you could have understood if it's outside the city, then too bad, it's outside the city. But apparently these fields, they're somewhat related to the city. They're needed for the city. Maybe it makes the city beautiful. Maybe the city can grow all their crops and get it from there. A bunch of farms outside the city that they need to sustain themselves. Something more essential to the city.
Quite a lot in Emerald.
What, these others?
Yeah, these Emerald stone, which excludes these fields around the city.
Okay. However, mandam or bagi, if you learn that center means these fields, so maybe the fields part of the land, it's part of the a necessity for your city. Aval bar mechavenisa lo mizdaven, but not necessarily does the town bureaucrat come with the city, but the fields that the city, that's a necessity for the city, or that's we can view as part of the city, so that would be included. I guess I'm just thinking now that when you say when someone says, I don't know, Southwest Portland, or someone says Portland, so you don't just think of the city limits, but you also think about the maybe the fields that are right outside. That's like part of the city, something like that. And maybe when someone refers to that city, they also refer to the land outside the city. It's really essential to the city, not just the exact boundaries of where people go and the houses end. So maybe in the way people speak, that's also they also refer to that. Okay, now tonight we learned in the Mishnah, our Mishnah, Beis Habadim u Beis Hashlachin. When you sell a city, including the city, are the olive presses and sounds like fields. Savruhu Mayi Shlachin. What are Shlachin? It's the word Shlachin. What does the word Shlachin mean? So they thought to say it means bagi. The word Shlachin already means fields. How do I know? The pasuk tells us that you're gonna from Eov that you're gonna put water. Hanosir, the full pasuk is Hanosir Mata al Panei Aretz. So there's gonna be water placed upon the land. V'sholeach mayim al Panei Chutzos, and water will be sent to the outside, means to the outer fields. But you see that the word Shlachin, maybe it's from the word Sholeach, to send, and they're called Shlachin, fields that need irrigation, because you have to send water to those fields. So maybe that's what, maybe Shlachin in the Mishnah is already referring to, is referring to these fields. So now, Bishlam alamandam or bar mecham nisa. So if it's good according to the opinion that says that a center means the town bureaucrat. Why? Amar Tanakama bagi mistanvi. The Tanakama said these shlachin are really fields. He only included fields are sold. Bar mechan menisa, the first opinion of the Mishnah, never included the town bureaucrat. Then comes Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel and says even a center, even the town bureaucrat is sold in the city. So meaning Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel is saying something. He would be disagreeing with the first opinion. So if the first opinion included fields and never included the town bureaucrat, so then Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel reads very nicely. He says, when you sell a city, you're selling the center. He argues and says you are selling the town bureaucrat. And that's a beautiful machlokas. They argue about, everyone's going to agree that fields are sold. The machlokas is this town bureaucrat going to be sold too? However, elamandam or bagi, if you say that center means bagi, that the word center means fields, so then what are they arguing about? Tanakama nami haki kamar. Tanakama also says, so Tanakama says you sell fields, and then Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel says, and you sell the fields. So that is not that's not logical. That doesn't make sense. So it says so you should conclude that center really means the town bureaucrat, because then the Mishnah reads well. If you learn that it means fields, and the Mishnah doesn't read well. Says the Gemara, yeah, but you made one assumption that first word shlachin is from the word sholeach, and it's referring to a field that needs irrigation. Let's break your assumption, and then you have no proof. Mi savris mai shlachin bagi. Well, who told you that the word shlachin means fields that need irrigation? Lo, mai shlachin, it means gino nisa. Really, the word shlachin means referring to gardens. Gardens. What's my proof? Shenamar shelachecha pardes rimonim. You see that same word of sending shelachayich pardes rimonim in primagadim kfarim im neradim from shir shirim. You see, meaning even the word shaleach we have by gardens, and so maybe that's what it means when it says shlachin in our Mishnah. It was just it was taking the word shaleach from the pasuk in shir shirim, and it's really referring to the gardens. Rashbam points out that it means that it's the gardens that send forth fruits every year. They send forth fruits. So before we thought the word shaleach was referring to you have to send me water. That's what it referred to in one pasuk. But now we're saying that it can refer to a garden, and the reason why the word shaleach is used is because it sends forth fruits. So if that's true, so then what the Mishnah is saying is like this: the gardens come with the city. Aval bagilo, the outside fields are excluded from the city. Aval bagilo is damni, and then the Aser Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel lemeimar afilu baginamim is davni, and he comes and says that even fields are sold. So Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel is always adding something. He's arguing with the first opinion, The question is he adding even the town bureaucrat, or is adding even the cities on the outskirts? And our machlokus remains, and we don't have a conclusion what the word means. Iked Amri. So some say like this: Savru Mai Shlachin is Ginoniasa. Really, Shlachin is referring to these gardens. Bishlam Alamand Amar Bagi. So if you understand that center means Bagi, which means it's referring to the fields, Amar Tanakama. So Ganunisa Mizdavin, Bagi lo Mizdavni. V'aser Rishon Gamliel Afilu Bagi Mizdavni. Right. So that's just a repetition right now of what we just said earlier. If the word center means Bagi and the word Shlachin means garden, so then the Tanakama is saying gardens are sold, fields are not sold, and then Rabbi Shimon Gamliel is saying even fields are sold. Ella, so now turning the page to Samach Samud Beis. Ella Lamanda Amar Bar Mechavnisa, but according to Rabbi Shimon, so now this other version is just expanding more now. But if you understand that a center is referring to the town bureaucrat, so now how does it make any sense? Amar Tanakama Ginunisa, he's referring to fields, and he's saying a garden is included, a field is not included. Umahadr le Rabbi Shimon Gamliel Bar Mechavnisa. So, and then he's responding, even the town bureaucrat. So they're not talking to each other. I'm telling you, gardens are included. And you're telling me, even the town bureaucrat. You should have said, oh, even the fields outside the city. That's what you should tell me. That's the way to argue on me. But not bring in the town bureaucrat. Yeah. Right. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel should have said, you say gardens and not fields. I say even fields. But he's jumping to even the town bureaucrat. So says the Gemara, hold on. Same as before. Mi savris mai shlachin gidanisa. Who told you that the word shlachin is referring to the orchards and the gardens that send forth fruits? Well, mai shlachin bagi. Really, shlachin is referring to the fields. The chsiv v'shalech mayim al panei chutzos. That's exactly what we had earlier. Aval bar mechamanasa lo mizdaven. The also Rishon Gamliel lemeimar that filu bar mechamanasa nami mizdaven. Right. So just saying what we had earlier, that if just saying it in the other version now. It starts off with gardens and ends off with fields. We started with fields and ended off with gardens. Tanakama really refers to shlachin means a field, and gardens and fields are sold. And the Rabbi Shimon Gamliel says, and even a town bureaucrat. And that would make a good argument. Okay. Tashma Rabbi Yehuda Omer. Center Eino Macher. However, in Al Kulmus is Macher. So Rabbi Yehuda says a center is not sold with the city, but an ankulmus is sold with the city. What's an ankulmus? So in general, a kulmus is like a pen to write. So an ankulmus is referring to the scribe of the king, and he counts all the fields and the houses of the people to put a tax on each person, which sounds very similar to our servant earlier. That sounds very similar. So it's interesting. Earlier, when we talked about this town bureaucrat, so the Rishbam says he just shows where the borders of the city are, where the borders of the fields are. Another opinion was maybe he was a security guard, but I guess this person really writes down exactly whose house belongs to who, not just the boundaries of the city, but more specifically, exactly which houses belong to which person. Not just so you need both people. One person is really marking off the general boundaries, and then one person is coming and saying, Gleizer lost Maravitz.
The layers of government.
That's right. They're the different layers of the government. So says the Gemara. So now, Mai lav mid umklus gavra center nami gavra. So isn't it logical that when Rabbi Yehuda made the statement that a center is not sold with the city, but an umklus is sold, so he's talking about the same kind of thing? He's talking about, from an umklus is for sure. That's not a question. That's for sure referring to a person, a gavra. So isn't it very logical to assume that a center is also referring to a gavra, to a person, and that would be a good answer to that would be a good proof that the word center really means a person. So, and that Rabbi Yehuda would be teaching us that the center is less of a necessity than an unkulmus. A center, does the boundaries, but an unkulus tells you exactly who lives where, so that you need. That's much more essential. Right. Yeah, he's the deeds office. He knows exactly if you have to send someone to that person's house. Where does he live? He lives over there, and now get his money from him. Yeah, the Rashbam sounds like this. On Kulmos, he writes down the number of fields and houses and people. Yeah, he counts up all the people, all the property, and then you can figure out exactly how much tax to tax each person. So says the Gemara, that's not a conclusive proof. Why not? Midi iria hakadisa. Sometimes you have this. You made an assumption that they have to be talking about the same kind of thing. Says no, hakadisa. Rabbi Yehuda is talking about center. That's one thing. It's a field. That's not sold. And kulmus is sold. Even though the simple understanding would be they're talking about a person, but sometimes you could have that in one statement. You're actually talking about two separate things. So therefore, you can't conclude decisively our question of what center means. So says the Gemara, hold on, not so fast. Look at the end of that statement of Rabbi Yehuda. You can really say that center and unkulmus are talking about two totally separate things. One's talking about a field and one's talking about the deeds office. So the Hakatani Seifa, we learned at the end of that Raisa, Aval lo shayareha, a whole list of things now. So 1 second, let's make sure we get it right. Yeah. Velo shayareha, that we'll see what that means. Okay. Velo benoseha, that refers to different villages. Velo chorshin hamakutzimla, that refers to different forests that are opened up to the city. Velo bibarin shalchaya, and different closed areas where animals might go. I don't know what's the word, not a cage, but much bigger than a cage for more for bigger animals. A closed off area. I don't know what?
Enclosure.
An enclosure. An enclosed area for chaya. Chaya means a more wild animal. Behemoth is usually more domestic animal. So enclosure for like you have in the zoo. You have the bigger animals have a bigger enclosed area where they hang out. Vishal ophos, vishal dogim, or an enclosed area for birds or for fish. So the Armina and Mai Shayareha, Bizli, not the Israeli food. Mai Bizli, Amar Abba, Piski Bagi. So Piski Bagi, who delo mizdavni, but Habagi Atzman mizdavni. So you see, we need the whole long list for this last part. There's something called Piski Bagi, so meaning Shayareha means Bizli, and Bizli was translated as Piski Bagi. Now Piski Bagi are these like parts of a valley, or really parts of land that are close to the city. They're not right next to the city. They're a little bit far from the city. There might be big rocks or big stones in between them, but they still have the name of the city. So I don't know, example, like you have America, but then you all of a sudden just one big area of land, right? And you have Hawaii, or Alaska, still part of America, it's just not attached to. Yeah.
Like Greenland, like Donald Trump wanted to.
Correct. I don't know, maybe like
it's a little bigger.
So these areas of land, so they're not right next to the city, they're a little far away, but they still retain the names of the city. So now the Gemara says, look,
that kind of creek running through the town. On the one side is kind of creek. I mean, is Hillsdale. On the other side is also Hillsdale.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So as long as it retains that name, so then when you sell that city, so whatever has the name of the city will be included also. So what do you see from the end of this whole statement is that Piski Bagi are not these things unless you specify them they're not sold. Who the lom is davening. Those are not sold as part of the regular city unless you specify. But habagi atzman mizdavni. But you can infer that these parts of land that are outside the city that are farther away, just because it retains its name, however, they're not going to be sold. That's Rabbi Yehuda's statement. Yeah, according to Rabbi Yehuda, it sounds like. But a regular field outside the city, so Piski Bagi is referring to the field outside the city, but you can infer from there, the Bagi themselves is sold. Why does that help us? Because we're inferring from the latter part of Rabbi Yehuda's statement that a Bagi, a field that's next to the city, will be sold with the city. So if you go back to the original statement of Rabbi Yehuda, center, Eino Macher, and Onkulmus is Yamacher. So what's center referring to? So if center was referring to the field outside the city, then you lost your inference from the last part. Why does the last part say, the Piski Bagi are not sold? Sounds like Bagi are sold. So if center means Bagi, which means the fields, there'll be a contradiction in Rabbi Yehuda. So it must be that center is referring to the servant, the town bureaucrat, and therefore our original proof that Rabbi Yehuda was talking about one that was talking about people, the scribe, the what'd you call it? The what office was it called? The deeds office. Oh. Really, it's referring to a town bureaucrat and the deeds office. So therefore, from Rabbi Yehuda, you could conclude that the word center is going to refer to the Eved. Okay, so says the Gemara, not so fast. Really, meaning we're putting the other opinion against the corner, and we're trying as hard as we could, and we're bringing good proofs from it. Epoch. So you know what? No. The other opinion has apparently a different version of Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, center macher and unkulmus eno macher. Really, a center would be sold, and an unkulmus would not be sold. And really, center is referring to Bagi. Center is referring to the fields. And now, when you make that inference from the last part of Rabbi Yehuda, that the Piski Bagi aren't sold, the fields that are far from the city that have the same name are not sold. However, that inference is no longer a contradiction to the first part of Rabbi Yehuda, because center really is macher. A center is sold. And once again, Rabbi Yehuda would be going like the opinion of Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, who says that told us that when you sell a city, you also sell a center. So now that we switched Rabbi Yehuda, we're saying, he goes like Rabbi Shimon Gamliel. Problem is, we have him disagreeing with Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, and therefore we go back to our original proof that it's referring to a town bureaucrat. Umimat is Amr Rabbi Yehuda Kirashbag. Can you really say that Rabbi Yehuda says like Rashbag, that they both agree when you sell a city, you sell the center? Rabbi Yehuda Kirashbag Sfirle, V'ha Rabbi Yehuda Kirabanan Sfirle. Rabbi Yehuda goes like the Rabbanon. How do I know? The Katani Seifa Avalo Shayereha V'lo Benoseha, that you're not selling the Shayereha, which we said refers to the fields that are far away. Shayereha was Bibli was the Piski Bagi, the fields that are far away. And you're not selling the Binoseha. The Binoseha are the villages that are close to the city. Those things are not included. But according to Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, he says, Ha'amar machar esa'ir, machar Binoseha. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel says, when you sell a city, you do sell the villages that are nearby the city. Where is that Rabbi Shimon Gamliel? Not in our Mishnah. The Tanya, we learned in the Brisa, Ha'mocher esa'ir, Lo machar es benoseha. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel Omer machar esa'ir machar benoseha. You see, Rabbi Shimon Gamliel says when you sell a city in the Brisa, he says you do sell the small villages that are attached to the city. I'm thinking now that in the very beginning of Masechtas Megillah talks about when you can read the Megillah. So people from the small villages would come in to the big cities for the marketplaces, for Kriyas Torah on Monday and Thursday, to go to court when it convened on Monday and Thursday, and they would supply food, for the people in the big cities. Meaning there's a lot of traffic between the smaller city, the smaller village, and the big city. They sort of relied on the big city for many things. So maybe when you refer to a city, you're including the people that are always coming through your city, also, which is usually the small villages, in the area. Okay, fine. But what do you see? That Rabbi Shimon Gamliel says when you sell a city, you also sell you sell the Binoseha. So that Rabbi Shimon Gamliel does not agree with Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda says that you don't sell the village, when you sell a city, the villages are not included. Says the Gemara, okay, but that's not a conclusive proof either, because you can say like this: maybe they both agree when it comes to a center that is sold, and they disagree to a village. So he'll agree to him by a center, but he'll disagree to him by if the villages are included or not. So we concluded that we are inconclusive if the word center is really referring to the town bureaucrat or it's referring to a field. I guess if this case actually happened and the guy wrote center, so we said earlier that if you say it's referring to the field, it's for sure. If you say it's referring to the Eved, then it's for sure referring to a field. But if it's referring to a field, then not necessarily is it referring to the Eved. So I guess if this would happen, so I guess the field would be up for question. And so Machlokas would break out about the field or about the Eved, I guess. So then you have to bring a proof that center really means that, or else it's going to remain. I guess it has to mean something. So maybe minimally it can mean as the field. So maybe the field would be sold until you can prove that center does not mean the field. Fine. Continuing on expounding this brisa, the brisa told us that you're not selling the lo bibarin shel chayav v'shel ofos v'shel dalkim. According to Rabbi Yehuda, the enclosures that enclose animals or birds or fish, those are not sold. Okay, viramini, but we learned in a brisa hayu lo banos, ein nimkaranima, that you have banos was referring to these villages. Yeah, so the brisa said that these villages are not sold with the city, but hayela chelek echad biyam v'chelek echad biyabasha. However, if you had hayachelek echad biyam v'chelek echad biyabasha, so now this is going back to the city. Part of your city, like you just said, with the water in the middle, part of the city, I guess just a little different. Part of the city is in the ocean, and part of the city is in the city. So
almost like Atlantis.
Yeah, so the Rashbam says if your city has one part of the city which is in the ocean, right, and it's called with that name, so then it would be sold with that. Meaning a village would not be sold because a village really has its own name, right? It just happens to be right next to your city, and maybe a lot of traffic going, maybe a lot of correspondence between the village to your city. However, your city actually has your part of it in the ocean, like America and Hawaii, something like that. I don't know. So that actually it has that name, so that but or bibarim shel chayav shel ofes shel dagim hari elinim karamima. So you see that really the enclosures of different animals and birds and fish are sold with the city. So that's directly against Rabbi Yehuda, who said that when you sell a city, the enclosures are not included with the city. So says the Gemara lo kasha, that's not a problem. Ha denachech kaihi legav, v'ha denagich kaihi lebar. So it really depends if the openings of these enclosures are towards the city. So then they're going to be sold with the city. However, the brisa according to Rabbi Yehuda that says that they're not sold with the city, it's because really they're really open to the outside. Where the opening of these enclosures really is open to the outside, maybe to the wild, to the forest, but it's not opening to the city. So really, it's more like a service to the outside of the city, and therefore it's not going to be sold with the city itself. I the hakatani veloasa chorshin hamuktzimla, but we also learned. Sorry. What's this referring to, Steve?
The forest.
Meaning we learned. So, sorry, according to Rabbi Yehuda now, that list of things that aren't sold is referring to enclosures that are facing the outside. The problem is, but Rabbi Yehuda said that when you have these forests, right, hamukatzinla, that are really like opening, that are really near the city, and sounds like they're open. Hamukatzinla, they're opening towards the city. So really, he's referring to things that are open towards the city. So you can't tell me that the enclosures are referring to opening outside the city. It says no. Ema hamukatzin heimena. Really, they're sort of separate from the city. Mukatzin Heimena, they're really separate from the city, and they're really open to the outside, and not open to the inside. Even it sounds like how Mukatzin was referring to, they have an opening towards the city. However, if you read it Mukatzin Heimena, they're not La, but Heimena, really it's like they're sort of separate from the city, and they're really open to the outside. Okay, I guess let's begin the next Mishnah. A long Mishnah about a field. Steve, you ready? Okay. So now you sell a field. What's included in the field? There's certain stones we'll see in the Gemara. The Gemara is going through every single one of these cases exactly what it is. Don't worry. But there are certain stones that are needed for the field. Those stones are sold with the field. And you have special reeds. You have reeds that you need for your vineyard. Shehem Litzarko is also included in the field. The Gemara is going to say, you see from here that a kerem is also included in the field, meaning not only the reeds of the vineyard are sold with the field, the vineyard itself, it sounds like it's sold with the field also. The esa tvua and any produce that's mechuberes the karka attached to the ground, that's also going to be sold with the city. The es chitas hakanim, it's a sort of some kind of group of reeds, either some kind of wall of reeds, a fence of reeds, a group of reeds we'll see in the Gemara. Shehi pechus, as long as it's smaller than mi base rova, I think it's about 10.5 amos by 10.5 amos. Only that area, then it's going to be a considered part of the field. If it's more than that, we're going to see that it's considered already its own entity, and then it's not included in the field. The esa shomira she'ena suya betit. Also a shomira, it's some kind of what is it?
Watchman's hut.
A watchman's hut. Okay, it's not made with plaster. I mean, it's not so attached. Attached. If it was, then it's its own entity and it's not sold. The yes acharov she'eno murkav, and it's talking about. Does it mean a carob? Is that in the carob, right? So a certain carob that hasn't been yet planted, grafted, as basulas hashikma, hashikma, that it's still the basulas hashikma is a kind of plant that hasn't ripened yet. What kind of plant is it?
And they talk about a virgin sycamore.
What is it?
Sycamore tree.
Virgin
Sycamore tree. Okay, a sycamore tree. Avalo. Okay, aval. Now the opposite. Avalo machar lo asavanim she'en l'tzorka v'lo tzakanim she'bekarim she'en l'tzorka. Rocks for your field that you don't need. Reeds for your vineyard that you don't need. V'lo zatvua she'it lushim min akarka, and not any produce which is removed from the ground. So all those things are not included. Bizman she'amar lo hi b'kol shamash besocho arei kulan mechurin. But if you would specify whatever's in my field, then all these things, even if you don't need them for the field, or even if they are, detached, they're all going to be included in the sale. Bangkok, no matter what, even if you wrote this statement, however, loas chitas hakanim, this wall of reeds, shehi base rova, that's as big as a base rova, is not going to be sold. Less ashomira, this watcher's hut that's made out of tit, will not be sold. Loas achar murkav, and not if it's a care that's grafted. The low s stand.